like to bring the DPW meeting of July 8th to order. I'd like to ask if anyone besides LCAT is taping this.
Shirley?
Yes, I am. Shirley Van Green for the minutes.
I'd like to approve the minutes of the meeting of June 24th.
Make a motion, we approve the minutes of the June 24th, 2014 meeting?
I'll second those.
Any further discussion?
I don't think so.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. And at this time, we'll be taking the superintendent's report.
I'm going to spend the first part of my presentation talking about Elm Street because there's a lot of moving parts on Elm Street. As board members have probably seen, Palmer Paving has been starting to work on the southern section of Elm Street on structure adjustment this week. They were on site yesterday. They're going to continue working on structure adjustment through the end of this week. They expect to get beyond Maple Shade. I don't know if they'll get all the way up to Springfield, but they'll be at least part way to Springfield this week, adjusting structures. They still are on schedule to begin the paving reclamation work next Monday. And that's really the intensive work where they bring in this large reclamation machine and they basically turn the existing pavement back into gravel. And the way that process will work will be on each day they will advance. They expect about 1,000 feet of road length per day. And they will go up both lanes of the roadway. They'll go up one direction and then turn around and come back the other direction. That will basically fluff the road surface up. There will then be about 4 inches of excess material that has to be taken off the top of the road surface because in general we're maintaining the existing surface elevation of the roadway. So as they rototill the roadway surface, they will have a loader following the reclamation machine scraping the top 4 inches of that material off the top of the roadway and loading it into dump trucks to haul it off site. They'll then rough grade the roadway and compact it to be able to then put that gravel surface back in service later that day. They'll then work down the other side of the roadway. So that's really when we're going to start to see traffic impacts at that point. We do expect in the section from the Rotary up to Maple Shade to Detour, all traffic but local traffic, since we do have some alternatives relative to detours, either taking detours all the way up to Maple Shade for the folks that are going all the way to Springfield, or taking some of the traffic down the local streets, although local streets aren't very wide. So really I think the main detour is going to be from the Rotary up to Maple Shade and then down Maple Shade for the folks that are continuing north of Maple Shade. So day one in the process will be the reclamation, the removing the excess material, the rough grading the roadway. Day two, that piece of the roadway will then be fine graded and the crown will be constructed to more or less the final crown, and it'll be recompacted. And then within a couple of days of that, there'll be binder course pavement put down on top of that gravel surface. The binder course timing will depend on the volume that Palmer wants to have a sufficient volume that they can get out there and dedicate a full crew for putting down binder. So it might be 2 or 3 days worth of road reclamation work, and then they put down binder, and then another couple of days, and then they put binder as they sequentially move their way northbound on Elm Street. Then the binder is going to stay down for several weeks. During that time period, it gives us time to do things that we need to do. It also gives them time to get all the way to the Springfield line and get all the structures then re-raised back to the final grade. And then once everything is raised to the final grade and all of the binder is down, then the top course will be placed. And that will be sometime before August 15th is the deadline that they have in their agreement at this point. But once the binder course pavement is put back down again, that roadway will be back in better shape than it is today.
Oh, for sure.
So it'll be very drivable. It will really be the couple of days in which people are driving on a gravel surface that it'll be most uncomfortable to drivers and to residents.
Now we're starting right about Stacy's Cleaners in that area there, just south of that.
Just actually north of Stacy's, you can see there's a seam in the pavement from where the roadway had been reconstructed.
That's what I was looking at. So that's where it starts.
That's correct. And then we will go all the way to Springfield, obviously. We'll go down side streets as necessary to blend to the side streets. At Maple Shade, we'll go probably about 100 feet in each direction because we need to put in the loop detectors on both sides of Maple Shade. So we'll go longer in Maple Shade than the other side streets. The other side streets will typically be, 10 to 20 feet or so will be done. As part of the Elm Street work, some of the board members may have heard that we did complete all our structure inspection along Elm Street. We did find that we have one culvert that needs to be replaced. It's the 42-inch culvert that carries the brook down from the Maple Shade School and ultimately all the way from Pleasant Street around the backside of the hill. It goes into a pipe through the Maple Shade property and then ultimately comes across Elm Street at about 131 Elm Street. We have inspected that. We have, and I've given you a couple of photographs in the package. The first photograph, I believe, is of one section of the pipeline interior where it's fairly obvious. If you look at the photograph, you can see where the side wall of the culvert has completely corroded in one location, and you can see some gravel material starting to come through into the culvert. Fortunately, that isn't continuous all the way around the culvert, but there are several sections of the culvert that look like that. If you then look at the road surface, which is the other photograph that I provided, you can see that we are starting to see some cracking of the roadway surface. Part of this cracking is there's a sewer line that also parallels the storm sewer, so part of the cracking that you see to the right-hand side of the photograph is probably more associated with the sewer line than it is with the storm drain. But if you look at the left-hand side of the photograph where that paint marking is, the white paint on the, you can see that the lines dip down a little bit, so there's actually a little bit of a settlement of the roadway there that kind of matches with some of the cracking and the settlement that you see in the front of the photograph. So, I think we are starting to see the effect of that culvert, impending failure at this point. We have reached out to the Conservation Commission. We have discussed this with the chairman of the Conservation Commission. I'll be meeting on site with him tomorrow. He's indicated that he expects to be able to issue us an emergency certification that would allow the DPW to get in most likely next week and replace the culvert with our own forces. The good thing is it's a relatively straightforward job. The culvert's 42 inches in diameter, so it's not an extremely big culvert. It's also relatively shallow. It's only 6 feet to the invert of the pipe. In fact, there's only about 1 foot to 1.5 feet of cover over the top of the pipe. So my biggest concern right now is if the reclamation machine went right over the top of the pipe, we could go right through the top of the pipe very easily. So we've asked Palmer to hold back 10 feet on both sides, give us time to get that culvert replaced, and then continue with the project.
Will you go deeper with the culvert then?
You can't.
You can't,
Yeah.
you're
That's
stuck at
too
that
slow.
elevation.
Yeah.
So they're gonna crown it a little bit? Or
We
if they
could
were
come
gonna-
up a
Can we
little
use
bit.
flowable fill
We'll use
over the
probably,
top, which would help, or
Yeah.
no?
Okay.
probably a combination. We at the beginning, or the upstream end and the downstream end of the culvert, we definitely want to put a concrete collar in there, because what can happen if you're not careful is you can get water seeping around the culvert. So we need to stop the flow of the water along the culvert. Stone goes in quick and is more cost effective than flow fill, so we'll likely mostly stone the culvert, but then at the surface, as you said, it would be good to get a more structurally sound covering over the top of the pipe that would carry the pavement. The key thing really is the stone around the pipe, because the polyethylene pipe that we'll be utilizing will tend to deform if it's not contained properly, and it's the backfill that contains the pipe that retains its shape. So we need to get stone in, and stone is very easy to compact. Get it in there, get the pipe cross-section maintained, and then that with the concrete over the top will carry the load without any problem. This pipe is rated for a minimum foot cover, so it's well within the rated duty of the pipe. But now is the time to do it as opposed to.
And that's which crossing?
That is
131 at
yeah,
Elm.
131 Elm Street. It's probably about 1,000 feet south of the Maple Shade intersection.
So is that the first one? Is that
By Mark Bailey's?
Stites and Bailey?
Yes,
The one that comes out of Birchland, Maple Shade?
that's correct.
Out of those
Comes right
backyards
across
and
Maple
comes
Shade
across.
Fields, yes.
Right.
Because there's another one too, right? That Brooks, down past Brook by Spate, no,
That
past,
that runs parallel
Yeah,
to,
by just north of Taylor is
yeah.
a second culvert.
and that one's okay.
yeah, that's
That was
the one-
replaced at some point in the reasonable past because it's a polyethylene pipe. It's not a corrugated metal pipe. So we're tentatively looking towards, Wednesday, maybe Thursday of next week. It's gonna be somewhat weather dependent. We don't wanna be doing it with, when stream flows come up. We need to make certain we have all the materials in hand, we have the equipment in hand, and everything we have to get in, get it done. Most likely, we'll start early and finish late as necessary to get it done in a single day. And we're looking, it's not a big job, we're looking at 45 feet of culvert, 2 sections of culvert essentially to put in, that's 6 feet deep in a long day. So that's one item that'll keep our staff busy, and Mr. Collins could talk a little bit more about how that will impact our staffing next week, but.
Can we pump over it? I don't mean to slow this down, but can we actually pump the water if the flow's not fast? We can pump it over and stay dry in there, or is it always running while we're working?
It will always be running, but there's 2 strategies. One is to sandbag the upstream side. There's actually a pretty significant, basically, storage basin that exists.
Just
let it back up, essentially all the way up to the Maple Shade Fields if we have to. Keep an eye on it, because there's a couple of outbuildings on private property that are the lowest points that water might back up to. And so in combination to letting the water back up to where it does during high flows anyway, and pumping around is necessary, because we do need to keep the excavation dry. We can't be working in mud for environmental purposes as well as getting the job done well and right. We need to get that hole dry.
Awesome.
We did, just if you're interested, we took a look at whether or not we could line that pipe. The impacts of lining would actually be as significant as replacing the pipe outright, because in order to line it, you need to stop the flow anyway. And if you go with some of the in situ form type liners where it's an epoxy resin, you then have worries about environmental impacts downstream, so you have to let that epoxy cure for a period of time so you don't have any issues with downstream impacts. It's also much, much more expensive to do that. So there's really no benefit on a very shallow culvert like this one to do anything but just to replace the culvert outright.
Sounds good.
At about the same time, Mr. Collins and I will be meeting with the foreman from Daigle Electric next Tuesday, as well as with one of our foremen, to go over what the conduit and handhold requirements are going to be for the Maple Shade Elm signal improvements project. Because the timing of that will be once Palmer comes in and reclaims the roadway, we need to get in and get 2 sections of conduit installed across Elm Street and Maple. And then we need to put handholds in, which will be off in the sidewalk, so they're less time critical. But the time critical items are getting the conduit in before the binder course gets put down. So that work is then taken care of. And then Daigle will come in while the binder is down, and they'll put their loops down and cut the loops into the binder course.
How many conduits?
There's 2 across the roadway, and then there's several that parallel the sidewalk essentially. Because you need to get across, let me see. I have a
North
mental-
and south and east and west?
Northeast.
Not even, it's only 2 crossings. There's one on the easterly side of Maple Shade, if I recall, and one maybe on the northerly or southerly side of Elm Street. The way they're fed, they are essentially fed almost in a circular fashion, so you don't need to go all the way around the circle. You just need to go from here to there, to there, to there, without coming back across the
Like
street.
a 180?
Right. Because when we're done, in addition to feeding the poles that are there now, we'll be installing pedestrian poles, additional pedestrian poles. So there's additional conduit, additional locations where conduit are going to need to be installed to serve the
When you
pedestrian
say
poles.
an pedestrian pole, a pedestrian be able to walk?
Yes,
hit it?
and it'll have, as you might see, the current standard on pedestrian lights are the countdown type of lights where you hit the
Right.
button and it gives you 15 seconds to get across the street.
Right.
And then at a later date, likely in between when the binder goes down and when the top course goes down, then we'll be reconstructing the sidewalk, the handicap ramps at that intersection as well. And the time to do it is once, before the top course goes down, but after the binder course goes down. So we know exactly what that final pavement grade is going to be, but the pavement grade isn't there yet. And then they'll pave to the bottom of the handicap
Yeah,
ramps.
because that intersection, the east side of Maple Shade and Elm, there's a dip just before the catch basin that holds water all the time.
And that'll be, the good thing is we'll be addressing points like that.
Yeah.
Palmer is going up and down the roadway, surveying the roadway, and as much as in general would like to create a crown down the entire roadway, in some locations,
It's not gonna be feasible.
It's not going to be feasible. Like in this culvert location we're talking about, the road drops a foot from the east side of the road to the west side of the road. So we're going to have to maintain that cross slope on the roadway and transition from a crown to that cross slope, unless we want to raise the roadway a foot basically, and obviously we don't want to do that.
You
because-
can't raise one gutter 6 inches and drop one gutter 6
Well,
inches?
you can do that, but then you're 6 inches low on the sidewalk and 6 inches high on the sidewalk, you know, so you're, or on the, so it's, we don't really want to change the direction the water is flowing right now, and to do so would trap water that currently gets to that.
I understand what you're
Yeah,
saying.
yeah. But in general, wherever it's feasible, we'll create a crown, but in a couple of places like
Couple-
that,
a
that's
couple
one of the extreme
places
places, it's not going to be
impossible.
feasible.
Right. Because I don't, there's a spot a little further, probably like Virginia Lane, where there's a big cross slope.
Yeah.
But you could maybe drop one side a little bit, pick one side up a little bit, without flooding somebody's driveway and still make it.
Our game plan is we've actually put together a number of, using the town's GIS, a number of 100 scale maps for the whole
Okay.
roadway. And we're going to sit down with Palmer before the week's over and plan out what the cross slopes are going to look like based on their survey.
Okay, yeah.
So they're going to get into it Monday. Already we'll know from this point to that point, this is the plan. From this
Right,
point
From
on.
this station to that station,
Correct.
we'll be working. Yeah.
Correct. So then the other piece of Elm Street is the gravel that'll be, or the excess material, which essentially will be gravel, reclaimed gravel that'll be coming off of Elm Street. There'll be about 3,000 yards of material coming off of Elm Street, 4 inches, 4.5 inches across the entire 8,000 feet. That is going to end up at the transfer station. About 1,000 yards of that is going to go to building at least a portion of the compost working pads that we talked about before, that the state is looking for us to create in the composting area. So, again, John can talk about this in more detail, but what we're trying to do is to get those areas ready so we can move the gravel right to where it needs to be. And then about 2,000 yards of that is going to be stockpiled for future use on the transfer station site. We did reach out to Mass DEP last week to get authorization to do that work, because technically anything we're doing on top of the landfill we should be doing with their approval. You know, they haven't, and probably for some time won't, issue a final approval on the landfill plan and the closure, but they did give us an email authorization to go ahead and build these compost area pads so that we don't have to worry about moving material multiple times in the future. They're going to let us move it to where it needs to be now. Lastly, just wanted to talk about notification a bit. You've seen that we've put the signboards in place. Hopefully people are getting the message that starting next week they don't want to drive Elm Street if they can avoid it. We've had multiple newspaper articles in the Republic and the Reminder. And we also, and I don't know if any, I don't expect any of you were contacted directly, but we are reaching out through Blackboard Connect to notify residents as well. We put our first notification out on Sunday night to the residents that live south of Maple Shade, between the Rotary and Maple Shade, and live in those side streets, basically advising them that we're going to be doing preparatory work this week and that there might be short-term detours, and, you know, just giving them a heads up.
Is that like the reverse 911, is that?
It's the same type of thing. It's actually a fairly interesting system where I can go online and draw a map around a geographic area, and based on that map, the system will reach out and deliver either a voice message if there's a telephone number, a text message if there's a text number, or an email to anyone that has provided their contact information within that area. So that notification went out to 237 people or so on Sunday night. So I think, you know, other than, and we talked at the last meeting, if a driveway needed to be closed down or something like that, again, none of that will happen long term. It may be, you know, as they're moving up the street, yeah, there's going to be a period of time where a piece of equipment is in front of a driveway. That's inevitable, but if there was anything longer than that, then we would approach those residents directly to give them a heads up. But I think we've got notification covered about as well as we can.
Sounds it.
So moving on to just a brief update on a couple of projects that our Bruce Fenney's project. Bruce is on vacation this week and actually next week as well. Very well earned vacation at this point. I think he reported last meeting, and I'll report again, that the pool project is 100% done, 100% in operation. It's being very heavily used 7 days a week, you know, from sunup to sundown basically. So I think the project went very well and is is being put to very good use by the Recreation Department. The tennis court reconstruction project, the existing tennis court surfaces were pulverized last week. As John had indicated, the poles and fencing was removed from the fence area, and at this point, Cape and Islands, who is the contractor, is out there working on grading, blending some of the pavement material with the subgrade, because there are some areas where it's, you know, the gravel and the pavement, the pulverized pavement needs to be better blended and better mixed through, and they're working on that. They expect to have that site fully graded by the end of this week, and to potentially, and I don't think it's going to happen this quickly, but ready to pave as early maybe as next week. Probably not next week because of paving schedules, but that essentially have their site work done to make it pavement ready, you know, within the week.
That'll be an asphalt surface?
That'll be an asphalt surface, correct, with and I don't recall the specs on the coating that goes on top of it, but it starts with an asphalt surface, and then there's a coating that goes on top of the asphalt surface. One of the key things is that it's been spec'd that the pavement that's put down doesn't have any, and you know the term, doesn't have any wrap in it, any recycled asphalt pavement. In this day and age, it's a way to stretch pavement further and further, and perhaps one of the reasons why pavement doesn't last as long as it used to is there's a lot of recycled material that gets blended into the asphalt material. For the tennis courts, where we're looking for them to serve another 30 or more years like the original tennis courts are, we want to make certain we get the best quality surface we can get in there, so the specs require no use of recycled asphalt, strictly unblended asphalt at that point, to get a higher quality product. The old fire station, there's been no activity to date, but we do expect that project to start up this week, contractors to start getting on board and doing the reconstruction of the masonry to be able to then see what's underneath and then reconstruct the parapet walls as necessary.
Right.
And then lastly, the Meadowbrook electrical project is starting up this week as well. Zap Electric, who's the contractor, is mobilizing this week and has a little bit of underground work to do, and they expect that to be ongoing with National Grid, likely later this week. So I think that takes care of projects, unless there's any questions that the board might have. I did have a couple of staff items I did want to talk about. We had talked a meeting or two ago that we were posting a new position. It was a building facilities repairman position. It was basically taking what we had been doing with a skilled labor and making that a more dedicated position, really elevating that position, as well as planning for the future, so that we would now be putting somebody into the building division that would be in a position to advance in the future as we have retirements within the Department of the Future. We did, and I think it's probably one of the first times in any of the skilled labor type positions that we've put in IT capabilities, computer skills as a prerequisite in the job description as well, because it's you know, more and more as you're starting to work with buildings, mechanical systems and other systems, being able to use a computer, being able to know what a spreadsheet is, things like that is becoming more and more important. So that was a prerequisite for this position.
Right.
We did post it internally. We had one candidate who applied, Ed Hellier, and Ed fit the description very well, so we have selected Ed as the new building facilities repairman. That position also comes at the level of a standby or a foreman 2 position, which makes Ed eligible to fit into the standby foreman rotation, which we're getting a little bit thin on right now, so it helps to add to that. It actually takes some burden off. We have one of our standby foremen who also works on standby for the pumping stations and would be in situations multiple times during the year where he would go from pump station standby to highway standby, and basically was essentially on 24/7 or more, and we knew we had to correct that situation, and that's helping us to correct that situation. We still have a posting out there for a skilled worker position. We've got about a dozen applications at this point. A couple of promising candidates. We have a significant number, probably 3/4 of them don't really meet the requirements that were put out there in terms of having both their hoister's license and having their commercial driver's license, which we really are holding fast to as a prerequisite, because we really need that flexibility in terms of staffing, particularly come the winter time, to be able to put anyone, whether they're in buildings, whether they're in
Right.
water and sewer or whatever, out there driving a truck and serving our needs. We have one candidate we're interviewing tomorrow. I expect we'll probably interview at least another 2 and see how it plays out.
Okay.
We're not in a big rush, so we can wait to make certain we find the right candidate.
I think it's more important to find the right guy.
So I wouldn't expect by the next meeting to be in a position where we have that position filled, but hopefully within the next month, if we find some good candidates. If not, then we can, again, wait a little while longer. And the last item, and this is a new item to talk about with the board as a whole, is that I posted today a engineering position within the department. The goal there is to backfill the position that Sean Kelly, as senior project manager, formerly served in, and also elevate that position somewhat in order to get the department in a position where we become more versatile and more capable, so we can continue to do more and more activities internally. As an example, right now, we have no one that has any extensive computer-aided design skills within the department. Mr. Gramaski was the only individual that had those skills, and whatever was done by he himself. I can turn on the computer, I can draw a line, but I'm not the guy that's going to be out there preparing plans and other types of things. So we need to get that capability within the department, and we don't currently have it. Likewise, to the building department, we need to be planning for future transitions as well, and as we look towards Mr. Mirandy transitioning at some point in the single-digit years forward, we would then have likely a more junior technical person that would be working with this more senior technical person. So, again, we're really looking to build the future of the department right now. Last item I have, this is a fairly simple one. As the board knows, a couple of weeks ago at our rate hearing, we adopted rules and regulations for the transfer station. We have found, and this isn't new to this year, that there's a couple of items that could be better clarified in the rules and regulations, and most notably, for a number of years, we have had inconsistencies in terms of how we handle the cost of disposing of mattresses. Mattresses, we pay per mattress to haul them out of the transfer station. We believe that, and have typically enforced, that residents pay per mattress. However, the way the wording in this write-up it was somewhat unclear that if somebody showed up with a pickup truck stacked to the top with 5 mattresses in it, do they pay $50, $10 per mattress, or do they pay $25, because that's the flat fee per pickup truck load? And that put us in a position where our cost was going to be significantly greater than what we were receiving from the residents for disposal of mattresses. And we've typically enforced the $10 per mattress fee, but we've had some people say, well, that's not what the website says, and that's not what the regulations say. So we wanted to essentially formalize what practices have been in the past and make certain that there's no situation where residents can come in and say that we are doing something different than what the regulations say. The other item, and this is really more of an operational change than anything else, but we're just making it clear here, is that we traditionally have said that we only take checks at the transfer station. Our practice, though, has been that we have accepted cash and checks, even though our regulations have said that we only take checks. So we've gotten the word out. We've got a posting at the DPW office, and we will have a posting down at the transfer station that indicates as of August 1st, we will only accept only accept checks at the transfer station. And we're just reinforcing that again in the regulations here, that we don't want to have people handling cash at the transfer station. One, because then we have to provide change to them so they can make change, and it becomes an accounting issue that we really don't want the staff there to have to worry about. And it's pretty typical. I don't know of another community. In fact, most communities you have to buy tickets at the DPW office and then use those tickets when you show up at the transfer station. So I think we're very user-friendly by allowing people to write checks at the transfer station, but we really need to get away from handling cash.
Understandable.
So what I would ask the board,
Thank you.
what I would ask the board to do, given that we are essentially at the beginning of the fiscal year, is just to adopt the revised rules and regulations that I put in front of you tonight. Again, those are, other than some formatting changes, those are the only changes of any substance.
Got it?
Okay,
Vote.
I make a motion that we adopt the revised transfer station rules and regulations.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion?
Think we're good?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
And the last transfer station item, I did want to note that, as you may be aware, John Agnoli has been working to temporarily fill the position of Carl Otto at the transfer station. Carl will unfortunately be out for the whole summer, recovering from what you understand. John has worked out very well, and George Lehrer has been very happy with John's activities, and he does what George doesn't like to do himself in terms of handling the cash or the paperwork and things like that. And as I said, it's gone very well. John's position, which is being funded through a tax rebate, will run out in a couple of weeks, and at that point we'll have to make a decision whether or not we continue John as the temporary replacement for Carl. If everything continues the way they have, I expect that that's the direction that we would go.
If he's working out, it makes sense.
And with that, I'm finally done.
Operations Manager's report.
As Bob mentioned, we're working up at the transfer station to get that ready for the compost station pad.
Yeah.
I think that the amount of gravel that we're gonna be getting, or millings from Elm Street, it's gonna come in a high volume. So we've been up there today, tomorrow, I would think Thursday, in moving material. We did a very good job today in opening the area up. It needs to be staked off. There's a number of steps that we have to go through to get this ready, which has caused us to remove the employees from Parker Street sidewalk. They were instrumental last week in getting the construction of the tennis court ready, working in that to save a little money there for the demolition of the existing tennis court. And as Bob mentioned, next week, going forward, we're going to be doing some work with the culvert on Elm Street. Right. And it would be that same crew. So we don't expect, I would like to get out possibly on Thursday and Friday, because we're very close to a pour on Parker Street. But aside from that, I would expect it would be a whole nother week before we had a crew out there, and then hopefully steady until that job is complete.
Back onto Parker Street.
That's correct.
Yeah, some of these things have to take a higher priority.
And with vacations, that's where we are right now. We have at least 4 or 5 people out a day going forward through the next 3 weeks.
That's understandable.
The water department has worked very hard to get caught up on all the water taps, all the construction, all the filming. Roy has his vacation, which starts this Friday coming up. So we're in very good shape as far as that goes. But as far as I don't want to say emergencies, but anything that comes forward in a hurry, something that has to get done, we have that one construction crew that we would utilize. I'd like to say that after the fireworks, I know that we've had some issues in the past with the center. It went on, I know that the fireworks, it was a rainy night and all that, but I think MEC had loom down there prior to the last ride being taken off the field. They were there Monday morning, spreading loom, cutting the grass, fertilizing. They've done a very good job in working on center field to get it back to its original state. And the JCs have done a good job of getting that going and having them come in and take care of that right away. I know that we had rain down there and there was some damage from the vehicles, but the pond system that we have and the drainage system in center field has really paid off in keeping it to a minimum. So I think that went well. Bruce has left me quite a bit of work for his employees. The electrician has finished, or is finishing, mounting a ceiling projector at Mountain View School. Joe Dunn, his plumber, is bouncing everywhere. He's up with some final touches up at the school, up at the Pine Hole. He's over at the tennis court, and he's handling any emergencies that come up throughout the course of the day. And they're doing a very good job, and they're a pleasure to work with. The crosswalk light that was hit last winter has been replaced on North Main Street, opposite Stop and Shop. The guardrail, and I don't have an answer for this yet, that was scheduled for July 1 to replace on Porter and Pleasant on the corner, and it has not been done. I gave a call over to Jim McKenna, the person that worked, our contact for Bartlett, and he has not gotten back to me yet. That was this afternoon.
Right.
I was surprised when I went by and saw that it was not completed yet.
Right. As far as North Main Street goes, when we got Palmer in here milling, do we want to mill that dip? We got a little,
Yeah. John and I actually spoke about that earlier
by that
today.
dry bridge?
Yes, we
Yeah.
did. Well, we thought that we could get that, we could do the preparation for that, but Bob suggested, and I totally agree, that perhaps while we have the contractor in town, he can come in and do the blacktop, do the
Right.
surface work, so that because it's North Main Street. And we believe that it's at a place where it has settled itself out, that if they came in and did it, we would be in good shape and not have to go back for any patchwork down the road. It would be very beneficial to have them do it.
That's what I would think, I agree.
Does that have to be infrareded, or is that just a?
No, we would have to notch it, we would have to, so that when they came in and paved, it would have something to adhere to.
Have a
and-
key.
Yeah, and we can do that. We
Yeah.
can do the prep work for that, no problem at all. But if they came in with their machine and ran through there, that would be.
It wouldn't take them no time at all.
No time at all, and it would be very, very, very beneficial to us.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds great.
Speaking of Palmer, I think we'd mentioned a meeting or two ago that they were going to come onto Chestnut Street down at the bottom of the hill where we have that bump.
Take
And
that
they
dip
have
out.
a new grinding machine that would essentially grind that bump out and leave a smooth working, so wearing surface there. They had that piece of equipment out on site today. Mike Shea, who I think is the number 2 individual at Palmer Paving, was out on site himself. After looking at it, the bump and the area beyond the bump is larger than is appropriate for that machine. As he looked at it, after the bump on the existing paving, there's a dip and then there's another bump in the existing paving. So what he wants to come in and fix the whole section, not only the problem that's his, but the problem that is just beyond his problem.
The adjoining problem.
Yeah, so what he's doing, he's proposing to do is he's gonna come in and mill that section out, and come in and put an 1.5 inch overlay on top of it, so we'll have new pavement that covers where that bump is, as well as new pavement that goes beyond, and then a continuous surface all the way, as opposed to a flat surface and then an existing bump that will, feel strange when you come off the new pavement.
Right.
So as of today, that was what the game plan. I don't have a schedule yet for when that'll be done, but he could have taken his piece of the problem down, but then there'd still be a problem there.
Yeah, they got enough things going on
Yeah.
right now in town. Sounds good. Done?
Excellent.
Any other business?
The only other businesses, I did go up at Pine Knoll. I was more than impressed with that project. I don't know if you got a chance to
I tried to get
get
up
there.
there today, and I went to see the kids up there playing.
Yeah, it's incredible. I don't know if you've been up there.
I haven't had the
It's
opportunity to
incredible.
get
I
up
mean,
there.
totally impressed with, that project and what it is, because I remember, $2-3 million it's gonna cost us, all that, for what we were able to get there for the money. I think it's a home run. I happened to hit there when the guys were there, and they showed me actually the mechanicals inside that pump room. Very impressive system that's in there compared to the old leaky couple of pipes that used to be in there. I mean, it's a major automatic chlorination, back
Yeah.
flushing, awesome setup. I was really impressed.
I should have said something more toward the building facilities, even aside from the pool, which is really beautiful. And they did such a great job in everything that they did. The plumbers, our electrician,
Yeah.
Bruce Finney, who led the way with all this. But all the buildings have been touched by
Yeah.
the buildings facility. They've all been done. Either built from the ground up, sided, windows changed. It's the whole place has come together.
Yeah, I had a CPC meeting last week, and I spoke with Colin, and he had nothing but great things to say about the whole building department, and especially Bruce,
Yeah.
and how smooth that project ran, and, you know, the fact that it was on time and under budget, and he couldn't speak any higher about the whole thing.
They've done a terrific
So I'm
job.
thinking we schedule our next meeting and wear bathing suits. Go up there, get Kelly up there, and
Be the swimsuit
yeah,
edition.
have the meeting and then jump in.
At the wide angle lens.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. Hey, what do you say?
For myself.
Oh, all right, I thought you were talking about me.
Oh,
Is that what you wanna do?
But very impressive.
We can schedule the next meeting for the 22nd.
I mean, I think it's the right thing to do, go up and see it and
that would be,
put it on camera. Have you done anything on camera with it? Do you know?
I'm not sure if that
Yeah,
has
I
yet.
think it would be pretty cool.
Yeah, Colin was very much up for it and would,
I guess a
very
courtesy
much
invite.
engaged.
And ask if we can go there and a courtesy invite if they wanna come.
Yeah,
That'd
I
be
mean, maybe you
Yeah.
can give us a tour, and maybe the,
oh, I spoke with him last week at the CPC meeting, he's on board.
okay.
Nice.
would you want to wait until Bruce was back?
Is he back on the
Would he be back
22nd?
there?
Yeah, we could,
Would he be back for the next meeting?
yeah, he should be back for the next meeting.
22nd?
22nd, works for me.
I'm not aware of him being on any more vacations in the near future, so that he should be available.
Right.
And I think it'll be weather dependent, you know, if we get into
Yeah.
a bad stretch of weather,
Right.
we can always post it to be here.
All right, and you'll notify the rec department and
Excellent.
Collins, see if he could be there.
Yeah. If it's feasible, I'm supposed to be in Boston on that afternoon, so if there's any way we do it on Wednesday instead, the 23rd?
I'm gonna be out of town.
Okay.
I can't do it on Wednesday.
Monday?
Yeah, Monday.
Monday?
Monday would be good.
Yeah, I can't.
Yeah, that
Can't do
29th?
Monday would work for me, the 21st would work.
He's out.
Oh, you're out?
Yeah,
Okay.
About the 29th?
29th is open.
Jeff's graduation, so that's fine.
So it's the 29th?
Nope. You're busy the 29th,
Yeah.
right? 30th?
I'll be gone to
Gone.
Jeff's graduation,
You know, if it,
Tuesday.
I'm so flexible, aren't I?
Yeah,
24th?
I'm gone from the 24th to the 28th.
Nice.
you know, I've got confidence that Bruce and John can handle things if necessary, you know, if that's short of skipping it, you know, 2 week, skipping a meeting entirely.
Yeah?
It doesn't sound like anything that week of the 21st or the following week is working.
Unless you wanna go into August?
Yeah, on that Tuesday, I've got an appointment at follow-up at Mass General for some surgery I had last year, so I'd rather not. Just about anything else I'd reschedule.
Don't miss it.
So, 22nd, if nothing hot comes up, if we don't have a big agenda, we've done it before in the summer where we bounced more weeks.
Well, I didn't know whether we wanted to just hold a
The
regular
5th?
meeting on the 22nd and then go to the final on the 5th of August.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Dude,
I'm sorry, you're doing a regular.
Going out 4 weeks to the 5th for the Pine Knoll.
For the
Okay.
meeting.
And then, so I would say let's schedule 7/22 and 8/5 as a thought. Pine Knoll is on 8/5.
Okay.
And then, I mean, just depending on how much there is or isn't on the agenda, the 22nd. If there really isn't anything, we've taken summer
Yeah.
breaks when there wasn't anything pressing.
Sure.
If there's something pressing, you need Bruce or John to cover. All right?
so we're gonna go,
7/22
is here,
is here,
and then
8/5 at Pine Knoll.
8/5 at Pine Knoll.
And Shirley will check in with us on maybe Friday whatever that is, Friday the 18th, before you post. Is that when you would typically post?
We post on usually a Thursday.
So on the
If it's a
17th,
Tuesday.
right, so on the 17th, you could check in with Bob and Tom and find out, is it worthy of posting, or are we just gonna wait and post the 5th? Works for me. We've done it before.
It's
Yes.
posted, you can always
Right.
cancel it, right?
Right.
Right.
Anything else?
Motion to adjourn?
Second?
Any further discussions?
None.
All in favor?
Yay.
Yay.